Every person at some point in their life longs for a place of peace, somewhere to escape the hustle and bustle of the world and just breathe. For Mrs. Amelia, that place was her secret garden, hidden away behind the tall hedges of her quaint cottage on the edge of town. After many years spent in the busy city, Mrs. Amelia decided it was time to retire and find her own slice of serenity. So she moved to a small house in the countryside where the air was fresh, the stars shone brighter, and the rhythm of life was much slower. Each morning, after a warm cup of tea, she would step outside into the garden, feeling the soft breeze on her face, listening to the rustling of the leaves and breathing in the sweet scent of blooming flowers. The garden, though overgrown and wild, was her refuge. It was a place where the world seemed to pause, where time itself felt gentler. But there was more to the garden than just its beauty. It had secrets, whispers from the past, hidden corners where mysteries waited to be discovered. And one crisp autumn morning, as Mrs. Amelia walked through the garden, she heard a soft voice on the wind, as if the garden itself were calling her. "Amelia, are you ready to discover what lies beyond?" At first she thought it was the wind playing tricks, but the voice, soft and kind, repeated. There was something magical about this garden, something that invited her to explore further. Little did she know, this garden would take her on a journey that would change everything she thought she knew about peace, purpose, and connection. This is just the beginning of Amelia's story, a journey where each turn in the garden reveals more than just flowers. It uncovers the wisdom of nature, the warmth of new friendships, and the magic of quiet moments that can change a life. So take a deep breath, relax, and let the garden's story gently guide you to a place of calm. Because in the next chapters, there are many more secrets to be uncovered, and they're waiting for you in the heart of the garden. Story: The Peaceful Life of Mrs. Lila. Chapter 1. The Beginning of a New Day. Mrs. Lila woke up early every morning, just as the first rays of sunshine began to break through the trees. She opened the window, inhaling the fresh morning air, and smiled at the scent of damp earth after the night's rain. The quiet of the morning was her favorite time of day. She would sit by the window with a cup of herbal tea, watching the world slowly come to life. The birds chirped softly and the breeze whispered gently through the leaves. Each morning felt like a small, quiet blessing. Mrs. Lila thought of it as her time for reflection, a moment to appreciate the simple beauty of nature that surrounded her. She had lived in her little house by the river for many years now, and though the seasons came and went, her love for these peaceful mornings had never waned. As she sipped her tea, memories of her children would often come flooding back. Her life had been full of laughter and love when they were younger, and she could still hear their voices echoing in the corners of the house. Chapter 2. The Melody of the Garden. Mrs. Lila had a small garden, and it was her sanctuary. Every afternoon, after a light lunch, she would tend to the flowers, trim the bushes, and pull up any weeds that had begun to grow. Her favorite flowers were the jasmine, whose white blossoms filled the air with a sweet fragrance. The garden was not just a place for plants, it was where she felt most connected to the earth. Each plant had its own story, and as she cared for them, she often felt as though she were caring for a piece of herself. The sounds of nature, the chirping of birds, the rustling of the leaves, were music to her ears. In the evenings, as the sun set and the garden became bathed in a soft golden light, she would sit on the small bench near the jasmine bush, feeling the serenity of her little world. Chapter 3. Memories of Family. Every time Mrs. Lila sat down to have a cup of tea, her mind would wander back to the days when her children were young. She would recall the simple joys of cooking meals for the family, of seeing their faces light up when they came home from school. Those were the days filled with noise and laughter, and Mrs. Lila had cherished every moment. Now her children had grown up and moved far away. They had their own families and their own lives, but Mrs. Lila still felt their presence. The house was quieter now, but she found comfort in the photographs on the walls, in the memories of them that would never fade. She often found herself writing letters to them, sharing her thoughts and experiences, even though she knew they were far away. It was a way of staying connected, of sharing the love that never left her heart. Chapter 4. Walking through the park. Each afternoon, Mrs. Lila took a walk through the small park near her home. It was a quiet place, with paths lined with trees and benches where she could sit and rest. It was here that she met many of her old friends, people she had known for years, and they would sit together chatting about the old days. As she walked, Mrs. Lila would often stop to admire the beauty around her. the flowers, the trees, the clouds drifting across the sky. It was the perfect place for reflection, a place where she felt at peace with herself and the world. One day, she met a man who had recently moved into the village. He was also an older gentleman, and they struck up a conversation about life and growing older. They found comfort in each other's company, and it felt good for Mrs. Lila to know that there were others who shared her feelings. Chapter 5. Sleep on the old bed. In the evenings, after the day had ended and the house was quiet again, Mrs. Lila would prepare a light dinner. She always made sure to eat something simple and healthy, something that wouldn't weigh her down as she got ready for bed. Before sleep, she would sit by the window and watch the stars twinkle in the night sky. The peacefulness of the moment would help her mind unwind, and she would think of the many quiet evenings she had spent over the years. It wasn't always easy to grow older, but in these moments she felt at ease. The soft moonlight would spill into the room, and she would slowly drift off to sleep, feeling the comfort of the familiar sounds of the world around her. Chapter 6. Reunions with old friends. Mrs. Lila had a small circle of close friends, many of whom she had known for decades. Once a week, they would gather at her home, sit around the table and share stories of their lives. These gatherings brought her great joy, and she always looked forward to them. The laughter and the easy conversation filled her heart with warmth. One day, one of her friends, an older woman named Ruth, came to visit, looking a little tired. Ruth had been unwell, and Mrs. Lila decided to take extra care of her, preparing soup and offering her a cozy place by the fire. They spent the afternoon talking about the past, and Mrs. Lila felt a deep sense of gratitude for having friends to share her life with. Chapter 7. The gentle rain. Some of Mrs. Lila's favorite moments were when it rained. She would sit by the window and listen to the sound of the raindrops tapping against the glass. The world seemed to slow down during those moments, and she found comfort in the rhythmic sounds of nature. The rain brought a sense of renewal, washing away any lingering worries or stresses. As she watched the water trickle down the window pane, she felt as if she too was being washed clean, ready for a new day. It was during these moments that she could truly let go, feel her worries dissolve, and simply exist in the present. Chapter 8. The paintings of life. One of Mrs. Lila's favorite hobbies was painting. She would spend hours each day creating small paintings of the landscapes around her. Trees, flowers, birds, and the ever-changing sky. Her artwork was simple, but it captured the beauty of life in its purest form. She would sometimes give her paintings to friends, and they would proudly hang them in their homes. One day, she decided to donate a collection of her paintings to the local church, a small offering of beauty and peace to the community. It was her way of sharing her love for nature with the world. Chapter 9. Reflections on life. As the years passed, Mrs. Lila found herself reflecting more and more on her life. She had lived a simple, quiet life, but it had been rich in love and connection. The days had been filled with small moments of happiness, growing plants in her garden, sharing stories with friends, and cherishing time with her children. She knew that the end of her life was coming, but she was not afraid. She had lived a life full of meaning, and now she was content. She had learned the value of patience, of living in the moment, and of cherishing the people around her. Chapter 10. The final lesson. In her final years, Mrs. Lila embraced the wisdom that only age could bring. She knew that life was fleeting, but she also knew that every day was a gift. She had learned to appreciate the small things: the smell of fresh flowers, the sound of a loved one's voice, the warmth of the sun on her skin. Each of these moments was a blessing, and she had made the most of every one. As she sat by the window one last time, watching the sunset over her garden, she felt at peace. She was ready for whatever came next, knowing that she had lived a life well lived. Story, by the Riverside of Tales. Chapter 1. A peaceful morning. In a small village by a serene river, there lived a man named Tom. His house was modest, made of red bricks, and had a sloping roof, situated far away from the hustle and bustle of the city. Every morning, before the sun had fully risen, Tom would wake up. He would step out into his garden, where banana trees grew and lotus flowers bloomed each season. Tom loved the quiet of the early morning. Every day, after a cup of strong herbal tea, he would sit in an old wooden chair by the window, closing his eyes and taking a deep breath to feel the fresh morning air. The soft breeze from the river would gently brush against his face, clearing away any lingering worries. For Tom, nothing felt more wonderful than waking up with nature, living fully in the moment. After his tea, he would take a stroll down to the riverbank. The golden rays of the sun would paint the sky as the lotus flowers bloomed in the early light. Tom walked slowly, hearing his footsteps echo in the peaceful air, only interrupted by the rustling leaves and the calming sound of the water. Chapter 2. A Friend Returns. One day, as Tom sat in a small tea shop by the road, he unexpectedly ran into an old friend, Jack. Jack was Tom's childhood friend, but he had been away for many years, working in the city, rarely returning to the village. This time, Jack had decided to come back to the village for a few days to rest. They sat together, reminiscing about the old days, sharing memories of their childhood adventures. Jack spoke of his life in the city, the challenges he faced, and the lessons he learned. But despite all the changes, he still cherished the quiet, carefree days they had spent together as young men. Tom listened, occasionally laughing, glad to see his old friend again. Jack said, "You know, no matter where I go, I always miss this village, the days we spent swimming in the river and chatting at sunset." Chapter 3. A Walk Under the Old House. The next morning, Tom took Jack for a walk through the village, showing him the winding paths they used to walk as children. Along the way, they passed an old house by the river, its tiled roof weathered by time but still standing strong. This house, according to Tom's grandmother, had once belonged to a wealthy family from long ago. Jack stopped and looked at the house, saying, "Do you ever wonder what stories these old houses hold? The secrets they keep hidden from time?" Tom nodded, reflecting on the stories his grandmother had told him about the village's past and the changes that had occurred over time. They sat by the river, watching boats pass gently by on the calm water, feeling the quiet embrace of the world around them. Chapter 4. Sunset and Heartfelt Talks. As the day wore on, the sun began to set, casting a golden hue over everything. Tom and Jack sat by the riverbank, watching the sun dip below the horizon, the water shimmering with its last rays. "Tom," Jack said, "have you ever felt how precious these moments are? Just sitting here, not needing anything, simply enjoying the peace." Tom smiled. "These moments are the most important. No matter what happens, I'm grateful for mornings like this, for being able to live fully in these simple things." Chapter 5. The Final Farewell. The next day, when Jack was about to leave the village, Tom accompanied him to the river's edge. The two friends stood silently as Jack's small boat slowly drifted away into the distance. "Come back whenever you can," Tom said. "This village will always be your home." Jack nodded, his eyes full of emotion. "Thank you, Tom. Every time I come back here, I feel like I found a part of myself again." As Jack sailed off, Tom felt a pang of sadness but also comfort. He turned back toward his house, sitting on the porch, gazing at the wildflowers blooming and thinking about the moments they had shared. Every morning, every evening, he felt blessed to live in this peaceful village, where friendship, love, and nature all blended together. Story: The Whispering Pines. Chapter 1. The Quiet Cabin. In the heart of a small mountain town, nestled between tall, whispering pines, there was a cozy cabin. It had a stone chimney, and its windows glowed warmly as the sun began to set behind the mountains. This was home to Eleanor, a woman in her early 60s who had decided to leave the bustling city life behind and settle in the mountains for a more peaceful existence. Every morning, Eleanor would wake up to the soft sound of birds chirping outside her window. The cabin was surrounded by a forest that stretched for miles, and the air was always fresh and crisp. After stretching and making her bed, she would step outside onto the porch, breathing in the cool morning air, listening to the breeze gently rustling the leaves. She had moved here a year ago, searching for solitude and tranquility, away from the noise of city life. The peace she found in the mountains was unlike anything she had ever experienced before. It was her own little world, where every day felt like a fresh start. Chapter 2. The Old Bookstore. One afternoon, as Eleanor walked through the quiet streets of the town, she stumbled upon an old bookstore tucked away between two stone buildings. The shop was small, but the shelves inside were filled with books of all kinds, from dusty old classics to newly published novels. The shopkeeper, an elderly man with silver hair and a kind smile, greeted her warmly. "Looking for anything in particular?" he asked. Eleanor glanced at the shelves, her eyes falling on an old leather-bound book. She pulled it from the shelf, its cover worn and faded, but the title still legible: Whispers of the Forest. "I think this one might be just what I need," she said, holding it up. The shopkeeper chuckled. Ah, that's a special one. A lot of people come here looking for that book. It has a way of finding the right reader. Eleanor smiled, purchased the book and left the store. As she walked back to her cabin, she couldn't wait to sit by the fire with her new book in hand. Chapter 3. The Secrets of the Forest. That evening, Eleanor sat by the fire, the flickering flames casting shadows on the walls of the cabin. She opened the book to the first page and began to read. Once upon a time, in a forest not unlike the one you live beside, the trees could speak, if you knew how to listen. They whispered secrets of the world, stories of ancient times, and wisdom that had been passed down through generations. Eleanor read on, captivated by the magical story. It spoke of a young woman who could understand the whispers of the trees, a gift passed down through her family. The more she read, the more Eleanor felt a connection to the story, as if the forest itself was speaking to her. She paused for a moment, glancing out the window at the darkening sky. The trees outside seemed to sway more rhythmically, as if they were alive, sharing their secrets with her. With a smile, she returned to the book, feeling a deep sense of peace settle in her heart. Chapter 4. A Walk in the Woods. The next morning, Eleanor decided to take a walk in the forest, eager to see if she could feel the same connection with the trees that the book described. She wrapped herself in a warm scarf and set off along the familiar path that led deeper into the woods. As she walked, the crunch of leaves beneath her feet was the only sound, except for the occasional call of a bird or the rustling of a squirrel. She stopped occasionally to admire the towering pines, their branches reaching high into the sky, and the way the light filtered through the canopy, creating a soft glow on the forest floor. After walking for a while, she sat down on a large rock and closed her eyes, taking in the peaceful silence. She let the breeze gently caress her face, and for a brief moment she felt as though the trees were whispering to her. It was as if the forest was welcoming her, sharing its ancient wisdom. Chapter 5. The Forest's Gift. As the days passed, Eleanor made it a daily routine to walk through the forest, listening to the sounds around her, and paying close attention to the way the trees seemed to speak to her. The whispers grew clearer, and she began to understand the deeper meanings behind them. It was as though the forest was teaching her the importance of living in harmony with nature, of slowing down, and of appreciating the beauty of each moment. One evening, after a long walk, Eleanor returned to her cabin, her heart full of gratitude. She had discovered a peace she had never known before, a peace that came from truly listening to the world around her. As she sat by the fire that night, the wind outside howling through the trees, Eleanor realized that she had found her place in the world. The forest had become her sanctuary, and in return she had learned the forest's greatest lesson, that true peace comes from within when we allow ourselves to listen, to be still, and to embrace the quiet beauty of the world. Story: The Lighthouse by the Sea. Chapter 1. The Quiet Town. In a small coastal town, nestled along the cliffs, there stood a lonely lighthouse. The town itself was quiet, with cobblestone streets lined with charming cottages and small shops. The sea breeze carried the scent of salt water and the sound of waves crashing against the rocks. The lighthouse, tall and steadfast, had been guiding ships safely to shore for decades. Sarah, a woman in her late 50s, had recently moved to the town. She had spent most of her life in the city, always rushing from one task to the next, never pausing to appreciate the simple joys of life. After retiring from her job as a teacher, she decided to leave the busy city behind and start fresh in the peaceful town by the sea. Every morning, Sarah would wake up early and take a walk along the beach. She loved the sound of the waves and the feeling of the sand between her toes. The peacefulness of the place was unlike anything she had ever experienced before. As she walked, she often found herself gazing up at the lighthouse, its light casting a warm glow across the water. Chapter 2. The Lighthouse Keeper. One morning, as Sarah was walking along the beach, she noticed an elderly man sitting on a bench near the lighthouse. He was staring out at the sea, a look of quiet contemplation on his face. Sarah had seen him a few times before, but they had never spoken. Curious, Sarah approached him. "Good morning," she said, offering a friendly smile. The man turned to her and smiled back. "Ah, good morning. I'm Edward. I take care of the lighthouse," he said in a gravelly voice. "And you are?" "I'm Sarah," she replied. "I just moved here not long ago. It's such a beautiful place." Edward nodded. "Yes, it is. I've lived here my whole life. The sea, the lighthouse, they're my companions." Sarah sat down beside him on the bench and they began to chat. Edward told her stories of the lighthouse, how it had saved countless ships from crashing into the rocks during storms. He shared tales of the town's history, of people who had come and gone, and of the deep connection he felt to the sea. As the days passed, Sarah and Edward began to meet regularly at the lighthouse. Their conversations were always easy and comfortable, and Sarah found herself looking forward to their talks. She was amazed by the peace and wisdom that Edward exuded, and she came to value his friendship. Chapter 3: The Storm. One evening, as Sarah was walking along the beach, the sky began to darken and the wind picked up. She felt a sudden chill in the air, and a distant rumble of thunder echoed from the horizon. A storm was approaching. As Sarah made her way back to her cottage, she saw Edward standing near the lighthouse, his figure silhouetted against the stormy sky. He was staring out at the sea, his face set in determination. "Edward, you should come inside," Sarah called out. "The storm's getting closer." Edward didn't turn around. "I have to make sure the lighthouse is ready," he said. "This lighthouse has seen many storms, but it never wavers. And neither can I." Sarah stood there for a moment watching him. She felt a deep sense of admiration for him, his dedication to his work and to the lighthouse that had stood through so many storms. As the storm grew fiercer, Sarah hurried back to her cottage, but she couldn't shake the image of Edward standing there, unwavering in the face of nature's power. Chapter 4: The Calm After the Storm. The storm passed through the night, leaving the town in a quiet, misty calm the next morning. The air smelled fresh and clean, and the sun was slowly starting to break through the clouds. Sarah went to the lighthouse to check on Edward. She found him sitting on the same bench, a contented look on his face as he watched the sea. The lighthouse stood tall behind him, its light no longer needed but still proud and steadfast. "You were right," Sarah said, sitting beside him. "The lighthouse really does stand strong through the storms." Edward nodded. "Yes, it does. But you know, it's not just the lighthouse that's strong. The people here are too. The storms we face aren't always just the ones we see coming. Sometimes, life throws us challenges we don't expect. But like this lighthouse, we have to keep standing, keep guiding ourselves and others through the dark." Sarah thought about his words, feeling a sense of calm settle over her. "I think I understand now," she said softly. "It's not about avoiding the storms but about how we face them when they come." Chapter 5: A New Beginning. As the weeks went by, Sarah found herself becoming more and more connected to the town and to the lighthouse. She had learned to appreciate the quiet moments, the peaceful rhythm of life by the sea. Edward had become a dear friend, and she felt grateful for the wisdom he shared. One morning, Sarah stood at the top of the lighthouse, looking out over the vast ocean. The sun was rising, casting golden light over the water. She felt at peace, as though she had finally found the place where she was meant to be. "I think I'm ready for this new chapter," she whispered to herself, the sound of the waves and the wind filling the air. The lighthouse, ever steadfast and proud, stood tall behind her, a symbol of strength, hope, and the quiet beauty of the sea. Story: The Meadow of Lost Dreams. Chapter 1: The Quiet Meadow. In a small village tucked between rolling hills and vast green meadows, lived a man named Lucas. He had spent most of his life in the village, growing up in a cozy cottage at the edge of the forest. The village was peaceful, with only the sound of birds chirping and the wind rustling through the tall grass to fill the air. Lucas loved the quiet solitude of the meadow near his home. It was his favorite place to go when he needed to think, to breathe, or simply to escape the noise of the world. The meadow was filled with wildflowers, the colors of which changed with the seasons. In spring, it was a sea of purple lavender and bright yellow daffodils. By summer, it was a blanket of golden daisies and soft green grass. Every day, Lucas would walk to the meadow, sit beneath the large oak tree at its center, and watch the clouds drift lazily across the sky. He had always found comfort in the stillness of nature, in the way the world seemed to slow down when he was there. Chapter 2: A Visit from an Old Friend. One sunny afternoon, as Lucas sat under the oak tree, he saw a familiar figure walking across the meadow. It was Clara, a childhood friend who had moved away many years ago. Clara had been his closest companion during their younger years, but after she left for the city, they had lost touch. "Clara," Lucas called out, a smile spreading across his face. "I didn't expect to see you here." Clara stopped in her tracks, her eyes lighting up with recognition. "Lucas," she exclaimed, running over to him. "I heard you still lived here and I thought I'd pay you a visit. It's been too long." They hugged and Lucas led her to the oak tree where they sat down together. Clara looked around at the meadow, her face softening with nostalgia. "I forgot how beautiful it is here," she said quietly. "It's like time moves slower in this place." Lucas nodded. "It does. I come here every day to find peace. It's the only place where I can think clearly." They sat in silence for a while, listening to the sounds of the meadow and letting the memories of their youth wash over them. Chapter 3. The Lost Dream. As the afternoon wore on, Clara turned to Lucas with a thoughtful expression. "You know, when I left this place I thought I'd be back soon," she said, her voice tinged with regret. "I had dreams of making a difference, doing something important in the city. But here I am years later and I still haven't found what I was looking for." Lucas looked at her, understanding the weight of her words. "Sometimes the dreams we chase take us far from where we're meant to be," he said softly. "I spent years trying to figure out what I wanted from life. But now I think I've found it here in this meadow. Maybe some of us are meant to stay in one place, to find peace in the simplicity of things." Clara's eyes filled with a mix of sadness and longing. "I left everything behind, including the people who mattered most," she said, her voice breaking slightly. "I thought I was chasing success, but now I realize I left my dreams behind too." Lucas took a deep breath, his gaze turning to the horizon. "Maybe this meadow can help you find what you've lost," he suggested. "Sometimes, you need to let go of what you think you want to make room for what you truly need." Chapter 4. A New Beginning. Clara stayed in the village for a few days, spending time with Lucas and rediscovering the simple joys of life. They walked through the fields, talked under the stars, and shared stories from their childhood. Clara began to feel the weight of the city's chaos lift from her shoulders, replaced by the calm of the countryside. One morning, as the first light of dawn touched the meadow, Clara stood by the edge of the field, watching the mist rise from the grass. She felt a sense of clarity she hadn't felt in years. "I think I've been chasing the wrong dream," she said softly, more to herself than to Lucas. "I don't need to be in the city to find happiness. Maybe I can find it right here." Lucas smiled from behind her, knowing that the meadow had given Clara the peace she had been searching for. Sometimes the dream is just about finding where you belong. Chapter 5. Returning to the meadow. As Clara prepared to leave the village and return to her life in the city, she felt different. The weight that had burdened her for so long had been lifted, and she knew she had found something far more valuable than success or recognition. She had rediscovered her sense of self. Before leaving, Clara visited the meadow one last time, standing in the center of the field where the wildflowers bloomed around her. She closed her eyes and breathed in the scent of the flowers, feeling the cool breeze on her face. "Thank you," she whispered to the meadow, to the oak tree, and to Lucas for showing her that sometimes, what we truly need is not far away but right where we are. As she walked away, she carried the memory of the meadow with her, knowing that it would always be a part of her heart. Story: The Secret Garden. Chapter 1. The Old House on Willow Lane. In a small, peaceful town surrounded by rolling hills and fields of wildflowers, there was an old house at the end of Willow Lane. The house was modest but charming, with ivy creeping up its stone walls and a small garden at the back. For years, the house had stood empty, its windows dusty and its door creaky, but it was the garden that held the true secret of this place. Lily, a woman in her late 40s, had just moved into the house. After years of living in the city, she decided to leave behind the busy streets and start anew in the quiet countryside. She wasn't sure what she was looking for, but she felt drawn to this house and its secret garden. The moment she stepped inside, she knew it was where she was meant to be. The garden, overgrown and wild, was a sight to behold. Despite the neglect, there were signs of life. The roses that had once been vibrant still clung to their branches, and small flowers peeked out from the tangled weeds. It was clear that someone had once cared for this garden, but it had long been forgotten. Lily stood at the entrance, taking in the beauty and chaos of the place. She felt a sense of peace wash over her. "I think I can make this my own," she whispered to herself. Chapter 2. The First Day in the Garden. The next morning, Lily woke up early, eager to start working in the garden. She put on her gloves, grabbed a small spade and headed outside. The morning air was fresh and the sound of birds chirping filled the atmosphere. As she began to clear away the weeds, she noticed a small stone path hidden beneath the overgrowth. It was delicate and winding, leading deeper into the garden. Curiosity sparked, Lily followed the path, wondering where it would lead. After a few steps, she came across a small wooden gate at the back of the garden. The gate was covered in ivy, and it looked like it hadn't been opened in years. With a gentle push, she managed to open it, revealing a hidden area of the garden. A secret garden within the garden. This part of the garden was even more overgrown than the rest, but there was something magical about it. The sunlight filtered through the trees, casting soft beams of light onto the wildflowers and moss-covered stones. It was a place of quiet serenity, as if the world outside had been forgotten. Lily felt an overwhelming sense of connection to this space, as if it had been waiting for her to discover it. Chapter 3. The Woman Who Watched the Garden. Over the next few weeks, Lily spent every moment she could in the garden. She worked tirelessly, clearing the weeds, trimming the overgrown bushes and planting new flowers. She began to bring life back to the secret garden, breathing new energy into the place. But she soon realized that she wasn't alone in her efforts. Every morning as she worked in the garden, she would catch glimpses of an elderly woman standing at the edge of the fence, watching her from a distance. The woman was frail, with silver hair tied in a loose bun, and she wore a simple dress that seemed to match the quiet elegance of the garden. At first, Lily thought she was imagining things. But one afternoon, the woman approached her as she was planting a row of tulips. "Beautiful work," the woman said, her voice soft and kind. Lily looked up, startled. "Oh, thank you," she replied, wiping the dirt from her hands. "You must be my neighbor." "I'm Lily, I've just moved in." The woman smiled. "I'm Margaret. I've lived in the house next door for many years." Lily nodded. "I've noticed you watching me work. Do you know anything about this garden?" Margaret's eyes softened and she nodded slowly. "This was my garden once long ago. I used to tend to it every day just like you. But as time passed, I grew too old to care for it and it fell into neglect. I've watched the house and garden from a distance, waiting for someone to bring it back to life." Lily smiled, feeling a deep sense of gratitude. "Well, I'm glad I found it. I think it's a beautiful place, and I'm so happy to be able to restore it." Margaret's eyes sparkled with warmth. "It's a special place. Take good care of it, Lily. It holds many memories, and with the right love, it will bloom again." Chapter 4. The Healing Garden. As the weeks turned into months, Lily continued to work in the garden, and the secret garden slowly began to transform. Flowers of all colors bloomed, the stone path became clearer, and the small wooden gate creaked open, welcoming all who wished to enter. Margaret visited Lily often, offering guidance on the flowers that had once grown there, sharing stories of the past. It became clear that the garden held more than just beauty. It held the history of 2 generations of women who had cared for it and loved it. Together, Lily and Margaret created something magical. One afternoon, after a particularly long day of planting, Lily sat on the stone bench in the garden, feeling the warm sun on her face. Margaret sat beside her, her hands folded in her lap. "I can feel the garden coming back to life," Lily said softly. "It's more than just flowers. It's healing me too." Margaret smiled, her eyes filled with wisdom. "That's the magic of a garden. It doesn't just grow plants, it grows people too." Lily thought about her own journey, the pain she had carried from her past, and how much the garden had helped her heal. She had come to this place searching for peace, and she had found it not only in the flowers but in the connections she had made, with Margaret and with the land itself. Chapter 5. The Gift of the Garden. One bright spring morning, as Lily was working in the garden, she noticed a small envelope tucked under the edge of the stone path. Curious, she picked it up and carefully opened it. Inside was a note, written in Margaret's elegant handwriting. "To the one who has revived my garden, may you always find peace here as I once did. The garden has been a gift and now it is yours to care for. With all my love, Margaret." Lily's heart swelled with emotion as she read the words. She felt a deep sense of gratitude toward Margaret and the garden that had brought them together. From that moment on, The garden became not only a sanctuary for Lily but a place of remembrance and love. Every day she tended to it with care and devotion, knowing that she was not only caring for the plants but for the memories of 2 generations of women who had found peace in its beauty.